I recommend placing the LiControls near the emergency brake, which means we're going to have to cut 3 holes into this housing here to mount the potentiometer, the button, and then the mode selector switch. If you're not mounting them here, then you're going to need to figure out how to mount them, however you want to do so. But here's my recommendation on where we're going to put the holes. So first we're going to take our right hand and just set it comfortably on this emergency brake, and just set it how it feels comfortable to leave it here for the whole time you're driving, which you don't need to do, but when you're using the LiControls, you want the buttons to be in a comfortable position. So the first thing we're going to mark is the potentiometer, and that is used with our thumb. And so we are going to be pushing on the potentiometer with this part of our thumb right here. So if you just find where the skin meets the nail here and place your finger comfortably, and then you can basically mark this here. And we're going to take a Sharpie and we're going to just draw a line across here. And that'll give us a spot for our template to cut the hole with. So now we have where our thumb is going to be, and we're going to be pulling forwards and backwards with that. And so next we're going to have a momentary button, and I really like having it below the potentiometer. So if we place our skin and nail line right there on the line we just drew, which should feel very comfortable, then if we touch here with our pointer finger, so that's this right here, that's where we're going to put the momentary button. And so we'll take our Sharpie again, and we will just put a dot kind of where we're pointing with our finger, somewhere like that. So now we have our potentiometer and our momentary button. And then over here is going to be our mode selector switch. And I like to push the mode selector switch with my middle finger. And this isn't a switch you use that often. So really you want to make sure you get the potentiometer right where you want it, the momentary, below it. And then the mode switch, I put it basically where I'm touching right here. And so again, we'll take our Sharpie here. So that will be our mode select. Here are the 3 marks we just made. We need to take the bottom 2 and extend them in a line just like we did over here. These stickers are a template that show us where to drill the holes that we eventually will cut out to be square. So each one of these circles here is where we will drill a hole after we attach these adhesive templates to that plastic console piece. So we'll go ahead and cut these out just around the lines, including right here on all 3 of them. The first one we're going to do is the mode switch, which says mode switch here at the bottom. That's going to go right here. And you can see where our line is. We basically want to center this on there. And I haven't taken the adhesive backer off, so I can just play around with where I want it. This inner black area is going to be where the cutout is. And again, these are where we're going to drill our holes. And so we need to make sure that the switch here doesn't come over into any of these really radiused areas. So if where you've drawn this line is, over here, for example, then that switch is not going to have anywhere to go. You can see the switch right here that we're going to be putting in. It needs to be, to where this plastic edge is not going to come over. And keep in mind that the plastic edge here is wider than the template hole. So we need to give ourselves quite a bit of margin here. So if you're up here, you can just, make sure it's centered in this area where there's no huge radius. I like it to be a little bit lower down here. So in this case, I'm making sure that this top corner isn't coming into that radius right there. And I'm basically lining this black line up with these interior triangles that we cut out. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you've drawn this at a slight angle like I have, you don't have to line up with both edges, but it's just a guide. So once I'm happy with kind of where I think it'll be, I'm going to take and remove the backing on this adhesive. And now I'm going to take the mode switch, and just as a sanity check, I'm going to make sure that it's not going to hang over that radius there, and that looks fine. It's not going to hang too far over the edge there. And as soon as I'm happy with where this is, I'm going to take a piece of clear tape and I'm going to tape around the top. We're going to do the same thing and put a piece of tape on the bottom here. And then I'm going to take an 1/8 inch drill, that's the size of this hole template, and I'm going to start drilling these holes. Now, the template here as shown is the actual finished cut width. This is the size of the hole that we want right here. So if your drilling is not superb, you can always drill a little bit more on the inside, and that way you don't make the hole too big. You can always make the hole wider by removing more material, but you can't put material back. So, you know, depending on your expertise in drilling, you know, you might want to err on the inside. So we'll go ahead and drill these 10 holes on this mode switch, and make sure again it says mode switch. Now that we've drilled these 10 holes here, we need to remove the rest of the material here on the sides. And so we can leave the sticker on for now. And I'm going to use a very sharp razor blade. You could also use a Dremel, or you could keep drilling. There's many ways you can remove the material. I'm going to just come in here with a razor blade. So now that we've removed that inner plastic, we're going to take our mode switch and see if it fits, and it probably won't fit initially. You don't want to cram it in there, but we'll just keep widening this, and I'm going to again just use a razor blade to just remove more material. And we still need to remove more material. Again, you can always remove material, very hard to put it back. Okay, so we got the switch to fit. Before we pop it in there, we need to remove our template. Now we'll take a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and we'll just remove the template lines that we had put on there, and we can snap our switch in. The one should point up. Next, we're going to do the single axis joystick. So we're going to take the template that says joystick on it, and we're going to repeat the same process here. Again, we need to make sure that the line here where we're ultimately going to be cutting out needs to be on this flat face. You don't want to come around this radius here or around that radius there. So the line that you drew here, again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but you want it to be lined up with the 2 arrows you cut out. And once again, you can take this joystick and just kind of get an idea about how much wider. This is what we're cutting the hole to. That is the edge that is going to finally be visible when we're done. And then we will drill the 10 holes right here. Now once again, we will get this joystick and cut more material out until it will fit. We do want to make sure that the connector here is facing to the right here. Okay, once we get that joystick fitting, we'll once again remove the template. And once again, we'll take a little bit of alcohol and just get rid of any of our template marks. So as you can see, in this case, I've cut the hole slightly to the right. Ideally, this would be to the left another millimeter, maybe even 2 millimeters. This is just fine. Finally, we'll be drilling the push button. Ideally, it would be collinear with these 2 edges here and there. In this case, I'm going to move this in just a little bit just to keep it off that radius. And then once again, I'll line it up with the black horizontal line we drew. Make sure you have at least 5 millimeters between this top edge and where you've cut out there. I'm just feeling along here. You can see that this is where that bottom edge and that is the edge here. So I've got plenty of room there, but you don't want these switches to overlap. So once we get this where we want it, we'll once again tape this on. And then we will take our drill one last time and drill, in this case, these 6 holes. Now that we've drilled these 6 holes, we can keep drilling holes here if we want. When we're fitting this switch, keep in mind it is not actually square, the cutout. So we need to have these 2 tabs pointing vertically. If we do some of our measurements this way and then we turn that way, we're going to end up with a hole that's too wide because this is not square. So again, the tabs should be up and down, not left and right. And there's our push button. So we will now remove our template. And now we can insert our joystick and our push button. On the joystick, once you insert it, it's quite difficult to remove. You shouldn't need to remove it unless you put it in the wrong way. If you do need to, you'll need to come in and push on these tabs pretty strongly to remove it. Once again, make sure the connector is towards the right of the body here, like that. You don't want it like this, you want it like that. And we also need to make sure that there's a rubber gasket here. We need to make sure that is straight before we stick this in. So we're going to stick this switch in, and you can see in this case this hole's a bit tight, so it's kind of removing this sticker. It's okay if the sticker comes off. Ideally it would stay on, but if it doesn't, that's okay. And then our push button, again, the tabs go up and down, and there are 3 buttons. So what we need to do now is hook these cables up. The one going to the potentiometer is very simple. You just plug it in, it will snap in. Next up, we have the momentary button here. And to connect this one, it's going to be the blue, white, blue pair. And these terminals here, I've tried to make them fit perfectly, but if they don't fit snugly or if they don't fit at all, you might need to adjust them. In this case, these 2 are already adjusted. If they're plugged in and they won't unplug easily, then that's good. If you can't get them to plug in, then you can pry a little bit on them. So the way I would recommend doing that is we'll unplug it, and you can take a flathead screwdriver and you can just kind of stick it in here and just kind of open this up a little bit. If you try to force these too hard, you can actually break the terminals on the switch. And it doesn't matter which, either the blue or the blue-white is hooked to what side on this particular button. You can hook them either way. Next, we're going to hook up the mode switch. The brown wire is going to go in the middle. The mode 1 is going to be hooked up to the green wire. So we're going to take and plug that into the top. And again, if this is too hard to push on, if you try to push this on and it just won't fit at all, and you push on it, you can actually break this switch, and then you'll need to buy another one. So if it is too tight, again, this one's not, but you can actually widen it. And here I'm going to really over widen this one just so I can show you the crimping process. So now this just comes right off. So that does not work. So what I need to do is take this needle nose plier and just crimp it down ever so slightly on both sides. So now that's good. And again, if you have to push hard on that, take the time to widen it out with a screwdriver, and then if you need to, you can crimp it, because if you push too hard and break this switch, then you need to get another switch. So now that we have the wire harness connected, we need to actually route the cabling out. And to do that, we're going to take this and just stick it over here. We're going to try and get these wires as much out of the way as we can. What we're trying to do here is make it to where none of the emergency brake is going to interfere with these wires. If you're not familiar with how that works, you can just throw this in your car and see when it interferes. You definitely don't want to snag these wires, and you want to keep these wires off to the side. So once you kind of have an idea about where this goes, we're going to take a piece of tape, and we're going to just tape this on like that. We will also need to tape this wire down so that it's not flapping about in here. Once we've done that, we're going to just do the same thing and just tape this all the way back. Once we get that routed out the back, that's basically it. So you can see how we have it here. It comes all the way up there. The wire harness is clear. You should be able to, if you were looking straight through this, you shouldn't see any of the wires if you're looking straight through it. It's okay to see them off to the side there, but that emergency brake housing, once it's in here, is going to catch those wires, which is bad news. Reinstalling the center console is fairly straightforward. We'll slide it over the emergency brake lever, and then we will drop the emergency brake down. Then we'll take the RJ45 cable and we'll plug it into the LiControl PCB, like so. And then we'll take some zip ties and come around and zip it to the wire harness here. We'll take another one and we'll zip it down here. We need to make sure we have enough room that we can pull this center console forward as needed so that we can install the middle aluminum assembly, which has the 2 metal tabs here that this screws into on both sides.